We continue along here on the Ostrom Avenue podcast. Johnny Gadamowitz, joined now by Donna Ditota of Syracuse.com and the Post-Standard. Donna, thanks for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I guess the best place I want to start, here we are with this Syracuse team after a tough loss over the weekend down in Charlottesville to Virginia. As we progress further and further into 2023 and ACC play really starts to pick up steam, where is this team right now as far as what you sort of had in mind before the season started, as far as whatever expectations came to mind?
Well, I thought it was going to be kind of a slowish start to the season just because there's so many new pieces and so many new parts to the team. And for Syracuse to get into any kind of postseason conversation, they had to have won a couple of games early. The Illinois game strikes me. The St. John's on the road strikes me. Trying to think of something else that happened earlier in the season that they could have sort of helped themselves with in terms of postseason resumes. But now at this point, here we are. They didn't win those games, and they let a couple of games slip away. They didn't beat Bryant, another opportunity for them. They didn't beat Colgate, 2 games in the Dome that they lost. So right now, I think that they're still trying to figure out what they're doing. I still think they're trying to, they need to get more consistent play out of a bunch of guys, and they just haven't. That just hasn't happened.
I mean, you look around the ACC, and I think the way it's shaped up as far as the standings are concerned are certainly a little bit different than maybe what people would have thought. Teams like Pitt and Clemson really kind of setting the tone towards the top of the standings. And then, of course, you have your usual suspects that are right there as well. But how much of that sort of topsy-turvy nature of the conference as a whole right now do you think will pay dividends and perhaps help out SU with some favors as we continue along here into January and February?
I'm not sure what you mean by favors.
Just in terms of the fact that, look, there are some winnable games out there for this team against teams that maybe have some resumes going for themselves now that is not what people thought, the Pitts of the world and the Clemsons of the world would have at this point in the year.
Well, I mean, those 2 teams, Syracuse plays on the road. So they've already lost to Pittsburgh at home, and they go on the road and play Pittsburgh again, and they play Clemson again. So those are 2 opportunities, sure. Those 2 teams have to keep winning. I don't know that Clemson has played. I got to look at their schedule to see who they've beaten so far in the conference. But I'm under the impression that they have not yet to play any of the sort of behemoths in the league yet. So let those teams have to keep winning, number one, to make those games a little more interesting for Syracuse. And I mean, let's just face it, Syracuse has to win games. There's every game out there is important. Tonight's game against Virginia Tech is really important. I think Virginia Tech's pretty good. If they get Hunter Couture back tonight, that's a game changer for them, I think. And that's a team that's sort of made to do well against Syracuse's zone, the way that they play and the personnel that they have. So every game is, and number one, an opportunity, and number 2, a potential pitfall. I mean, regardless of what team you are in the conference, I think.
10-6 on the year, 3-2 in the conference. You mentioned some of those losses in the non-con that might rear their ugly head when it comes to resume time in a couple of months from now. But, what would you sort of diagnose as some of the bigger issues for this team, more overarching themes as far as what's gone wrong?
Well, they haven't been able to guard the 3-point line. That's been a huge problem. Teams are taking a ton of threes against Syracuse's zone, and they're making too many of them. That's a huge problem, especially for a team that doesn't take a lot of threes. To me, that is their major problem. They don't guard the 3-point line well, and they don't make a lot of threes themselves. They don't take a lot of threes, and they don't make a lot of threes. Although over the last few games, they've made a lot of threes, and they've made a very high percentage of threes. And so maybe at some point they'll start to take a few more, and maybe it won't sting as much to have a team, shoot 40 against them or something if they can make some of their own. But in the absence of that, they have done well in games that they've won. They've turned teams over, and in games that they have not done all that well, they have been turned over. In the last few games that they've they've caused a bunch of turnovers, but they've also made a bunch of turnovers, and those have been that's been problems for Syracuse. The defensive rebounding is always a problem for Syracuse's teams. This year is no exception. They still don't rebound the offensive glass that well, and the defensive glass that well. And the defensive glass is what ends a defensive possession. So you're making players play more on defense because they're not getting defensive rebounds.
I know you recently wrote an article about how the beginning of games has been an area that SU has struggled just in terms of starting hot out of the gate. How much do you think that has really played a role in how the results have gone here over the past few weeks?
Well, yeah, I mean, the problem is you can sort of get down against teams that maybe aren't great and have a better chance to come back. But when you get down 20 against teams that are pretty good, that's a really hard ask for a team. So, starting better would be obviously helpful. I mean, then you still have to maintain that kind of intensity or whatever it is that you're doing over that period. But starting better would certainly be a help.
We'll hit on a couple of players individually here now. I guess the first one I want to start out with is Benny Williams, who I think, is the player that a lot of people thought would make that year 1 to year 2 jump that is so common in the college basketball landscape, and for whatever reason just hasn't really happened to the extent that Orange fans were hoping for. Is there anything that you've seen from Benny in particular that is sort of inhibited his ability to be that impact player that so many thought he would this season?
And he's just been very inconsistent. When he's been good, he's been really good. But when he's been not so good, he's sort of disappeared. And I think, he understands that he needs to be a lot more consistent. It's just, you have to translate that understanding to an actual happenings that happen on the court. And, he was sick in the last game. So who knows how he would have bounced back from his poor game before that, or his inconsequential, I guess, game before that. But I think he's a talented kid. I think he has a bunch of tools, and he's gotten better in a lot. His jump shot is better. He's shooting the ball better. He has to be willing to be a little bit more physical at the four. And let's see if that happens. I mean, he's a very good athlete. I think he could rebound better than he's rebounded. I mean, he's had a couple of double games, which prove that he can do that. And so I think he's he's an interesting, valuable guy. And the other guy, Malik Brown, is the guy who's also played a lot of the four for them. And he is a completely different kind of player than Benny, but also really important. He's a rebounder. He's a tough kid. He gets in there and battles on the boards and battles defensively, where he might not be in the proper position at every single time. I think he's willing to sort of mix it up in there a little bit. And he knows his strengths, he knows what he's good at, and I think he tries to do those things. So that's an interesting position. I think there's two guys there who both are potentially pretty good. And it's trying to figure out who's best on that day, or who is best suited for the defense that they're seeing that day.
While we're on the topic of the forwards, it's no secret that a theme or a motif for Jim Boeheim through the first couple months of this season has been the lack of rebounding from some of those forwards, from some of those wing players. What do you sort of make of that whole debacle, and just how crucial, just how much of a role has that played?
Well, I mean, like I said, defensive rebounding has always been a Syracuse struggle. They are not good on the defensive glass. They have not been in the many, many years that I've covered them. They have not been a good defensive rebounding team. Part of it, I think, is the zone. Players will tell you that they don't have anybody particular to block out. Part of it is because teams take so many threes against that zone. The rebounds aren't coming necessarily where you might hope or think that they're coming. That being said, you have to have a certain instinct, and you have to have a certain drive to go get the ball when it goes up on the glass. And I think that has sort of been lacking. And it's not just this team, it's been other teams too. I think that there has been just a disinterest really in going after the ball, or a lack of instinct to try to go get it.
We'll shift gears here. I want to talk about Jesse a little bit. Really was put in the ACC. Well, I shouldn't say the ACC because it was during non-conference play, but was put in the collegiate basketball world on notice in the early portion of the season. Last 5 games, numbers have taken a little bit of a dip, and Virginia in particular really bottled him up. A season low 4 points on just 2 field goals. Was there anything in particular that you saw UVA do that allowed them to be so successful in kind of neutralizing him?
UVA does something that they've done for years with the big guys, right? When they catch the ball anywhere near the post, they immediately send a double team. And so I think Syracuse, Jesse certainly should have recognized that, should have known what they were going to do, and he needed to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker. And also guys needed to be better presented themselves a little bit better to him once he caught it, to say, here I am, get me the ball off this double team. What teams are doing with him is they're trying to muscle him out of the lane. And there's a couple of problems, I think, with that. Guys are bodying him and getting him out of the lane. But part of it too is, when you're a big guy and you post up in the lane, a couple of things have to happen. You have to time it properly as to when you could receive the ball, when a guard or a wing is ready to pass you the ball, because you only have 3 seconds in there. And number two, when you get in there, the guys have to pass it to you. So I mean, that's part of the problem too. Is I think there has been sort of, they haven't been great at feeding the post. Certain guys are better at it than other guys are at it. But it's a twofold thing. Jesse has to time when he's going to cut, number one, and number two is those guys have to find him once he gets in there.
Do you think that by the time, the regular season comes to an end, as we move into February and March, he will still have, inserted himself in that conversation of premier ACC big men? Like, is there a salvageable road out there? I know, granted, he's still been just fine, but that Virginia game in particular raised a lot of eyebrows. What's sort of the road ahead for him as far as, making sure that he is towards the top of the big men in the conference?
Well, he still is rebounding, which is important. And he's, for the most part, avoided some of the silly fouls that have plagued him during his career. I mean, I think all those things need to be worked on. Timing of cuts, being able to be strong in there, hold a position. I think all that can happen. But as you get older in this league and as you get better, teams are going to game plan for how to stop you. That's just the way it goes. So, he's going to have to just be a little bit better in there.
We'll touch on Judah Mintz now. I think the player that maybe Orange fans were most excited about coming into the year. Just what have you seen from Judah relative to, other stud freshmen that have come through this program over the year? What do you anticipate his mark to be on this program by the time he's no longer here?
Well, I mean, he has incredible quickness and speed. He's great at getting past his first guy, getting the first guy in his hip and getting into the lane. Where he has struggled this year is that second read, once he gets into the lane, figuring out what he's going to do with the ball. And, some days he's been better. Some games he's been better at it and pretty good at it. And some games he's not been so good at it. He's going to have to become a better jump shooter. He's going to have to, at some point, start making some threes. And because he's getting acres of space out there to shoot the ball, and because teams are like, he's not going to take them, he's not going to make them, and we're going to sag back in the lane and make him drive on us, and try to prevent him from driving on us. Basically, he's certainly a dynamic guy. I think he leads the league in steals. His quickness and his speed and his tenacity and his toughness. I think he plays really hard all the time, which I think is really important. But he's also, learning how to play point guard. He was a scoring guard, like a combo scoring guard in high school, and that's a really tough transition to make. It's really hard to be a freshman point guard, and I think the guys who come in here don't understand how hard it's going to be, and I think people who watch them don't understand how hard it's going to be either. It's really, really hard. And, I think he's done a fairly good job. I mean, he's had some really, really good games, and he's had some games and some halves in particular where he hasn't been as good. So, but I mean, that's to be expected. He's a freshman. There's a ton to like about him. But again, it's his first year playing point guard, and he's doing it in a conference that has a lot of veteran guards who are gonna make him work for everything he gets.
Mintz, Girard, and Edwards, I think it was going into the UVA game, responsible for 62% of SU's scoring output this year. For me, at least, it seems like when you're going up against some of these other ACC teams, Syracuse not necessarily checking the box in the talent department. What do you sort of make of the fact that this team is so reliant on Joe Girard to be the guy, on Jesse Edwards to be the guy, on a freshman in Mintz? And what does that sort of say big picture? I don't know if we want to have a recruiting conversation here, or what's sort of your perception of the fact that those are the guys that Syracuse is going to war with this year?
Well, I don't think it's that uncommon to have your three big guys. I think every team has their three sort of studs, right? And you have to get a decent amount of production from all those guys to have a chance to win games. But you have to do other things too. So the other guys have to do other things too. And the other guys have to score as well. I mean, you can't just have those three guys scoring, because certainly, I mean, Joe had, in my estimation, a remarkable year. He had those 3 games where he was not all that good. But aside from that, he's been really good this year. And he has gotten the best defender. He's been face guarded in a very tough situation. I think he's been very good this year. I don't think it's unusual, though, that teams have 3 guys that they rely on. I think if you look at most teams, there's 3 really good players and then a couple of role guys. And they have to get other things from those role guys aside. They have to get some scoring from them. They have to get some defense from them. They have to get rebounding from certainly the forwards. And I don't think it's too unusual, just the way it's set up. If they have a fourth guy, it's obviously a lot better. But who that fourth guy is going to be is at this point unknown. And it's okay if that fourth guy is unknown,
You mentioned the big Virginia Tech game tonight, obviously, with us recording this Wednesday morning. You look ahead to the schedule and, safe to say that, this kind of gauntlet, I guess, this January gauntlet has arrived with, you start the month with Virginia and Virginia Tech. You end the month with Virginia and Virginia Tech, and you get Miami on the road, Carolina at home sprinkled in there as well.
Right.
We talked about it on our podcast last week where, you look up and down and you don't see a lot of sure things that you can circle as far as wins are concerned. What's your impression of this next month schedule wise, and what does a good month over the next month look like for Syracuse?
Well, I don't think any team in the ACC is like looking at their schedule over the next few days and saying, "Oh, these are pretty easy wins." There's no, and this is a sort of a coaching cliche that I hate to even bring up, but Boston College beat Virginia Tech, and I think Virginia Tech's pretty good. Virginia Tech's lost 4 straight games, and I think that team is pretty good. Like, I voted in the AP poll, and I've had them in my AP poll earlier in the season. There aren't a lot of super easy games, and for me, like if I were to. I would look at it as every single game that Syracuse has is an opportunity to prove that they're better than their record, or that they're better than teams that people might think that they are, or to prove that they are a viable team in the ACC. Every game is an opportunity, and that's how I would look at it as a player, and that's how that's how they should look at it. You should be fired up to play against a team that's one of the best teams in the conference, considered one of the best teams in the conference. We'll see what happens. I don't think there's a whole lot of separation between, say the top, there's 8 or 9 teams in the league. And like yesterday, I watched Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and those are 2 of the teams in the bottom half of the conference. And that was a pretty good game. I mean, it was a battle in that game. It went into overtime. You just never know. So, as for the future, who knows? I mean, honestly, I have no idea what's going to happen.
SU last year on the road, just 3-8. So far this year, 2-2 compared to a 7-3 record at the Dome. Is there anything specific with this squad that when obviously going on the road is a tougher task than playing in front of your home crowd, but is there any common denominator that you've noticed in those road games, even if it be carrying over from last year as well, that just has led to some inefficiencies when they're away from Central New York?
Well, we talked about the top half of the league and the bottom half of the league. The 2 road wins they have are at Louisville and at Notre Dame. And I think both of those teams have a combined 1 conference win. So I think that's part of it. I mean, they got their first 2 road games were against teams that were in the bottom part of the conference. It's hard to win on the road regardless of who you are. And, I don't have any kind of like I said, I think every game is a chance to win. Every game you have a chance to win. Every game, the other team has a chance to win, obviously, and it's just who plays well that day. And
awesome.
In terms of the road situation,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's harder obviously to beat North Carolina in North Carolina than it is to beat North Carolina in the JMZ Dome or whatever it's called.
Exactly.
Remember the name of the dome.
Yeah.
But that's my road situation.
I hear you. Last one I've got for you here, Donna. We'll look into our crystal ball a little bit, I guess. What does this team kind of need to, if you had to really hone in and hit on 1 or 2 things that this team needs to do, in order to kind of right the ship here and grab some quality ACC wins as we move ahead? What are the specific things that you're kind of going to be keying in on?
I would say they have to guard the 3-point line and they have to rebound better. Those are the 2 things that I would say, because I think their turnovers is kind of I don't think they're going to turn it over as much as they've turned it over. I'm not sure why they turned it over in those games as much as they did, although they were pacey games because they ended up pressing in those last couple of games. But I don't think the turnovers are going to be as dramatic as they've been, but I think they need to rebound the ball better, and I think they really need to guard the 3-point line.
Well, there you have it. That's Donna Ditota of Syracuse.com coming on and discussing some SU hoops with us. Donna, thanks so much for the time.
All right, John, thank you. Take care.